What's up, everybody? It's the Power Rankings Podcast, aka the Power Rankings Show. I'm your host, Elliot Harrison. I'm joined by @Marcus_Moser. It's kind of a chillax day here on the Power Rankings Show. It's a few days after Christmas. Marcus got his slot car set that he really wanted for Christmas, which was important, some Hot Wheels. And I got wonderful things as well.
What's your favorite present you got?
Ooh, cookies and cream. I really liked every gift I got. My sister-in-law got me a navy blue hoodie. I've been needing a navy blue hoodie forever. I'm one of those guys, like, you wear those big, thick hoodies. I like the thin, but I live in LA where you need a thin hoodie like every day of the year almost. And I got you. And I've told you before,
big, thick hoodies though, because it's like negative 30 degrees around here and I want to live. So
for sure. And they're so great to lay on the couch with. But yeah, I've told you before, every man should own navy blue, either blazer, jacket, hoodie. It goes with everything. But I got really good books on French and Indian War and the Korean War because I'm a history nerd. And my mom, though, I wanted to show you, gosh, I don't know if I have it right here. My mom got me a Don Meredith plaque that has him under center against the Falcons in probably like 1966. And on the right are all his career numbers. It is so cool. It's on a kind of a navy blue mat. Mm-hmm. It's something you could frame and put up. And as you know, I'm a big 60s Cowboys nerd also. Mm-hmm. So Marcus and I have had a few talks on Bob Hayes and stuff like that. I really love that era of football with any team, not just the Cowboys. It just so happens I grew up in Dallas. That's what I learned. What's that?
So that's a cool gift. Your mom did well.
Yes. I couldn't believe. I said, where did you find this? And she said, I have my ways. I said, okay, Gandalf. Thank you. Anyway, so did you have a favorite gift?
My mom and my sister got me a Nespresso coffee maker, which is absolutely fantastic. So if Nespresso, if you're listening to this, please sponsor our show. I know they reached out on Twitter because I was raving about how I can't go back to a regular Keurig coffee cup anymore. Nespresso is the way it's at.
I enjoy your non-football tweets. I do. They're very few and far between, but I enjoy them. I think you should do a little more of that, a little less Sean Hockley. I know you're feeding the base. I get it.
Yep.
I'm a big George Clooney fan, and I know Brad Pitt's doing them now, but he was the original Nespresso guy. Right. Yeah. So I actually thought about getting one of those.
I view myself more as like a Danny DeVito than George Clooney, but
yes. Okay. Hey,
have you seen the Danny DeVito Nespresso commercial? It's pretty good. So,
I think I did. Did you see Twins? Were you a fan of that movie?
Yes, I was.
Yeah. That's like 1990 Arnold. Yeah. Okay, we got a lot to do today other than Danny DeVito, although I espouse the greatness of Danny DeVito myself. We're going to rank the teams. It is the Power Rankings Podcast, but we do that on Tuesday. First, though, we had a Monday night game last night that really has gotten a lot of, what's the right word, disdain for scheduling. If you didn't catch it, don't blame you. You didn't miss much. The Saints were just totally depleted. They're depleted at quarterback. They're depleted. Both tackles, I think, were out. Yep. And they could not compete with a Miami team whose defense is coming in hot. The team itself is coming in hot, but especially their defense. And the Saints had to line up a quarterback that had never played, backup offensive lineman. What's your thought on should the NFL push this out to Tuesday or Wednesday? Do you think it would have made a difference? What do you think should have happened here?
No, I don't think it would have made a difference. And it's really unfortunate because even if this game is played on Wednesday, it's not really fair to the Saints then to have to turn around and play on Sunday. Or even if you move that game to Monday, it's a weird year, Elliot. I think we just have to kind of remember that when we talk about these, the 2020 and the 2021 year, like in context, right? Like it's just, the Super Bowl is going to be decided by whichever team probably doesn't have a lot of COVID cases in the playoffs. And I think that's unfortunate, but it's kind of the reality of the season.
So I'm going to bring this full circle for you. So Marcus lives out in the Amish country in Pennsylvania. And so Ian Book was playing last night, and I was like, that's a very unusual name, right? And I was thinking, do I know the only person I could think of whose last name was Book was the main character of one of my favorite movies that's never talked about, Witness, with Harrison Ford. and his name is John Book, and it takes place in Amish country or whatever. And I'm literally thinking about the movie Witness because the game was such a snoozer. But I felt really bad for him because although he didn't play particularly well, it's pretty hard to play when you have pressure in your face nonstop. The one late in the game, Marcus, that came from the right tackle, I can't remember who hit him right on the chin
on that play. Oh,
I mean,
gosh.
dude, look, I am kind of with people. I think I didn't like one of the calls where they called for roughing when the guy got blocked down and all he did was grab at the feet of the quarterback. I think that's not the spirit of the roughing rule. I think if a lineman grabs the feet of the quarterback, that's not the same as being hit low. But that play that we're talking about should have been called. That was egregious in my mind. That's what the rule was created for. Am I crazy here?
No, I think you're right. I also just want to talk about like Miami's defense. They can make some really good quarterbacks look bad. They made Lamar Jackson look awful. And it's just a really tough spot for Ian Book in that game. I don't think we can take anything away from that game for his future of whether he's going to be a franchise quarterback or not. But just it's really unfortunate that he had to start in that game and a really important game for the Saints that they ended up losing because of putting 20 guys on COVID.
You know me, I'm always the Gran Torino get off my lawn guy about Twitter, but the smartest tweet that I saw last night was somebody said, there's no way Sean Payton's evaluating Ian Book off this game. No, there's no way.
I think Sean Payton will tell Ian Book after this game, hey, let's burn the game tape. We're not going to think about that game. Try to erase it from your memory because we know you're a better player than that.
Yeah, I was a little surprised too. One last thing on this game that Louis Riddick was kind of criticizing him for his decision-making on 2 4th downs. And I was glad Brian Greasy stepped in and said, look, man, the guy's just got to throw the ball up. If you throw an interception, you throw an interception. But what you can't do is hold the ball. By the way, I like Louis Riddick. I was just in that one particular case, I agreed with Brian Greasy that, look, man, on 4th and goal, you're going to throw an interception sometime. Not 4th and goal. I'm sorry, 4th down.
4th down.
So anyway, at least I didn't call Ian Book John Book. So I'm going to come in on the under on that 12.
I think you are. We got a whole show though to do today. So let's see how it goes.
All right. Let's start with the rankings. Do you have any other thoughts on Monday Night Football?
Let's go ahead. I want to get to some of these teams.
We should say, though, Miami now in much better position. That was a huge game in terms of the 7th wild.
Well, I've got thoughts on Miami. Don't you worry. I'm going to make sure we talk about them in a little bit.
But just globally speaking, that was a really big game for the 7th seed in both conferences. The Saints and Dolphins came in at 7-7. Now the Saints are kind of behind the 8 ball, although the Saints have a very easy schedule. Miami does not. We'll get to that in a second or in a few minutes. Let's start at the bottom. I'm coming in hot on the Jags. I don't know if you saw any of the Jets game, but I want everyone to know that Marcus always calls these kind of games the Elliott Harrison special. And I try to, rebuff that where I can. So Patriots Bills is on my brother's TV, and on my laptop, I'm watching Jets Jags, and my brother, my nephew, and I all huddled around Jets Jags at the end and ignored Bills Patriots. And I thought, oh my gosh, Marcus is right. And now I've influenced my poor family.
Also,
who are defensive.
I was just saying oh my gosh, the play calling and decision making by the Jags at the end of that game is ridiculous.
Atrocious. If I could have loved your tweet 1,000 times, I would have. I think you said the entire final sequence was a disaster.
They spiked the ball on 3rd down on the 1 yard line with like 15 seconds left. Why not just throw a fade? Who cares if it's incomplete or you throw it to the stands? At least you give yourself a chance. Spiking the ball makes no sense at all.
I'm going to do you one better. Right before that, Trevor Lawrence takes out. I had to remember the exact game situation. So I think they had about 30 seconds left. He takes out off around the left-hand
side. Yep.
He's fast. He gets down. He's just got those long strides, right? Mm-hmm. He gets to about the 5 or the 6 and decides to run out of bounds. He's got one DB to beat. If he cuts inside of him, he probably scores. He's way bigger than this defensive back. Trevor Lawrence could have tried to truck him. Now, I'm not usually for your franchise quarterback trying to truck somebody. We saw Tua try to do it last night. But there's a difference between Tua trying to truck somebody in a game that he's up 2 touchdowns where the Saints can't even get a field goal. This is for the game, right? you know which play I'm talking about?
I do. I don't have as much problem with that because it gave him a first down, and now you have a bunch of time, inside of the 5-yard line. So I get it.
To butcher it? You have plenty of time to butcher it?
You have plenty of time to butcher it, which they did. But I get your point. Like Trevor Lawrence is all of 6'5", 220 pounds. You even just take the defender on and you probably fall close to the end zone, but
and reach the ball out. Do the Taylor Heineke, right? Taylor Heineke's got that move mastered.
Yep.
Reach the ball with your right hand and graze the pylon on the left corner. Anyway, enough on the Jags, but I just had to get that out. Let's go to 31. The Giants. That game was 3-3 at halftime. And then the Eagles got going. Not a great game for Fromm. Any thoughts on the Giants?
We are 2 years into the Joe Judge rebuild, and they are further away than what he was when they started. It's typically not a good sign if you are a new coach. And we're going to get to another coach next. That's in a very similar situation, right?
I was about to say,
let's group them together.
Which team are you talking about?
Well, let's group them together because the Panthers are in the same spot. Are they any closer to getting to the playoffs going into year 3 with Matt Rule? Because I don't think so. I think you could honestly justify firing both of these guys and being better off.
Matt Rule did reference Jay-Z. I really appreciated that. But
so
I think what's that? Corny?
It was so corny. It's just own up that your team sucks. That's all you have to do.
Okay. Is that as corny as if Russell Wilson got on Twitter today and said commitment? No. What do you think Russell Wilson's one-word tweet today would be? We'll do that at the Seahawks.
Resilient.
So the Panthers, by the way, I am cognizant the Panthers have 5 wins. Let me reiterate, these are not power standings. This is how I think the team would fare right now, COVID aside, on a neutral field. And I think the Panthers are one of the 3 worst teams in football right now. I really believe that. Houston Texans, I've got 4 or 5 teams, I'll mention it on each one, that I thought could be higher in my rankings. This is one of them. I don't mean to take you to task here, Marcus, but you were pretty down on them playing Davis Mills earlier. Are you a little bit more pro, and do you like what you see?
No, I was wrong. I thought Tyrod gave them a better chance to win, and I thought they were playing Davis Mills because it organically allowed them to tank. But that's not it. Davis Mills actually gives them a better chance to win because he throws the ball down the field. And, hey, you get some more time to evaluate him. I'm not sure that he's the long-term answer there, but he's not bad. And I would also say this, Elliot, this team went 4-12 with Deshaun Watson leading the NFL in passer rating last year. David Culley already has his team at 4 wins this year and with a much less, of a roster.
Sure.
It's pretty impressive.
Well, they had a mini fire sale already, right?
Yeah,
so, their leading rusher for weeks. I don't think he still is, but Mark Ingram was their leading rusher 7 weeks after he got dealt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good job by him.
Low 4th round.
He was a 3rd round pick. He was the top of the 3rd round.
3rd round. Okay.
Yep.
First of all, that's an advantage, kind of like the Cowboys with Dak or even Russell Wilson getting a quarterback in that spot. One thing people need to remember when you're a high 3rd round pick, you're in the top 100 players in the country. So I think sometimes we get a little too married to 1st round picks. Marcus, when you think of it in that context, you go in the first 3 rounds, you're the top 96 players. Just something to think about. Speaking of top picks that are quarterbacks, the Jets, Zach Wilson had one of his best games, maybe a little overrated. He had a huge run in that game. I saw his QBR was through the roof on this. Not that I'm a QBR guy.
Better than Joe Burrow this week.
Yeah, I prefer Techno Bowl's rating system. That said, I don't know if you saw Braxton Berrios in this game. I will tell you something about that guy. If we're just talking about 0 to 10, 10 yards, that guy is as fast as just about anybody in the league. Pure acceleration off the start. Heck of a game by the guy. Now, I'm not just talking about on special teams. I know they showed the kick return on all the highlights, but he had some nice plays in the passing game.
Yeah, Jets are still a ways away, but at least Zach Wilson has shown some improvement since the start of the year. Not too bad.
I made a mistake last week. Lions at 27. By the way, the Jets were 28, Texans 29, Panthers 30, Giants 31, Jags 32. So we're at the Lions on 27. I asked Marcus about Jared Goff, and I was like, why was Jared Goff sticking in my head? It's because he was on the COVID list. Jared Goff didn't play. They had to play a backup this week. and they still almost won the game. I told you the Lions would cover. I also predicted them to win. I went out on a limb. I lost, but I don't know if you saw the end of that game. He threw it right to the underneath linebacker.
They were inside the red zone. Like, they had a chance to win that game. So,
I rewatched the play. I rewatched the play, and he just didn't. It's just one of those classic cases where you have a linebacker hiding underneath that second layer. And the whole goal is quarterback doesn't see him. And when you watch it on TV, you're like, how could he make such a dumb mistake? I guarantee you he did not see him lurking there. Sean Lee made several big plays in his career doing the same thing. Luke Kuechly as well. Probably Luke Kuechly more so. Seattle Seahawks at 26. By the way, I did not punish the Lions for that loss. I thought they played hard.
Sure, I agree.
Seattle. So interesting thing on Twitter, Jason Myers, the kicker, apologized, basically said, stop with this Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson riff. If I make my kick midway through the fourth quarter, we're not talking about this. It would have put Seattle up 10. But Russell Wilson took a huge sack from Robert Quinn. If he would have just eaten the ball, probably would have made a difference in the game. What did you think of this game for Seattle?
That's the exact reason why the Seahawks are struggling right now. Is Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson like to play in games like this, right? They like to keep games close to the fourth quarter, fairly close, and try to win them at the end. If you are a good team, you don't allow the Bears to hang around to the fourth quarter. You put them away early so that no comeback is possible. I really feel like the Seahawks need to hit the reset button and start over, because this roster is not working right now.
Yeah, and just if anyone thinks I'm being hypocritical out there saying, well, Ian Book was under all this pressure and Russell Wilson took a sack, totally different. Ian Book had pressure on him immediately.
Yep.
This play, Russell Wilson went through his progressions. No one is open. He tried to do that thing he does where he kind of spins out and drops deeper.
Yeah, it was a Russell Wilson thing he did. Yep.
Yeah, and Robert Quinn was right there, and it made a big difference in the game. Let's go to Atlanta at 25. So offline, Marcus was telling me, Elliot, you got them at 25. They could still make the playoffs, and it moved me not 1 millimeter.
No, because they have a point differential of minus 171. They are far closer to being the worst team in the NFL than they are a playoff team in my mind.
I meant to do this. I'm going to look it up. I wanted to see who that underneath linebacker was that made that clutch play for them.
I believe it was it Folson Aku? I don't know how you pronounce his name.
Yes. Yes, that's who it was.
Yeah.
Folson Alokun.
Alokun. That's how you say it. Alokun. Yes.
There we go. Anyway,
that's too much time by him. That's too much time with the Falcons. I hate talking about this.
We're already done with the Falcons. All right, let's flip the rundown here on Breaks TV. We'll get to number 24. Falcons were 25. 24, I got the Washington Football Club. Now, I could have given this team a more precipitous drop. As is, they're already dropping a few spots. It was a bad game. It's been a bad couple of weeks for that franchise. I don't think this is reflective of the team.
Yeah, short week for them. Still a bunch of guys on COVID. They had some stuff going on the sideline. They're better than what they showed on Sunday night, but they're still not good enough to be a playoff team. So I think
every bounce went against them in that game. I mean, the Cowboys clearly outplayed them, but even like the block punt, the ball literally just bounced. It's the most fortuitous bounce ever. Yep. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong for them and went well for the Cowboys, which we will get to the Cowboys in a bit. Chicago Bears at 23, we just kind of touched on their game. Nick Foles came in, delivered a clutch. Say what you want about his career. Whenever a team really needs a win or the game's on the line, he's done a great job for whoever he's been with. So if Nick Foles is a great backup, then that's what he is. I just would like to say, I think Micah Parsons is probably the defensive player of the year. I think it's arguable. I don't think it's Rayvon Diggs, but Robert Quinn deserves some mention. The guy has 17 sacks. He's got almost 50 tackles. He's on a team whose best what if Khalil Mack right now was healthy?
And that was always the vision for the Bears. If we have these two edge rushers, we're gonna be fine. I don't think the voters are going to give it to somebody whose team is 4-11, but I do think he deserves some votes. I agree with you.
Yeah, and I'm not putting him over Parsons. I know everyone's high on Parsons. Parsons can do more. But, hey, there's something to be said for somebody that could do something exceptionally well. And to have 17 sacks in 15 games when the best pass rusher isn't even there. And Robert Quinn's getting up there in years. I mean, it's impressive. Wasn't quite that guy for the Cowboys.
Okay. No, he was good, though. He had like 10 sacks that year with the Cowboys. He was good.
He was good. Not this good.
No.
This is special good.
Yep.
And by the way, he is the one that sacked Russell Wilson that changed the outcome of that game or affected it. Speaking of defense, I love saying speaking of, because it's just the poorest transition you can possibly have. That's why I go to it all the time. Broncos at 22. We've talked about their defense a lot. I think it was Vic Fangio who said after the game, there's literally nothing. He had nothing he could say about the offense.
Yep.
It looks like the Broncos season is over. You've talked about teams tearing it down. Do you think the Broncos need to do that, or maybe give this another go?
No, I think they're just a quarterback away. Elliot, they are going to finish this season as the number one ranked scoring defense in the NFL. Do you know the last time the number one scoring defense in the league didn't make the playoffs?
Oh, man. I know the last time a number one ranked defense, but scoring defense, I do not.
It's never happened. It's never happened that the number one scoring defense has not made the playoffs, which is absolutely insane. If this team can get average quarterback play, they're going to be a legit contender in the AFC. I still would think about moving on from Vic Fangio if the right guy came along, but this team is not as far away as maybe the record indicates.
What's interesting is 2009 Chargers. They did make the playoffs, but they finished first in offense and defense.
They were fifth in points, first in yards on defense, because that's the one that came to my mind as well. So I looked it up. They were excellent, but 32nd in special teams. Biggest reason why they struggled to get wins.
Well, this is one time that I couldn't remember something that was a victory, because there wasn't one. When I meant tear it down, I was really thinking more Teddy Bridgewater going forward with that. I think an underreported thing this year for the Broncos is some of the production they've gotten from their young running backs has actually worked for them. But Cortland Sutton, who everybody thought was kind of on the verge of becoming a star, has not had a very good year. It'd be interesting to see what the Broncos do to retool in the offseason. Of course, we will talk about that a lot in the offseason after we get done with Jags talk. Raiders at 21, they got a win. Marcus, they beat these Broncos. I still think they're a weak team. I know they're still playoff relevant, but they don't look good.
They don't look good, but Elliot, they're in a situation now where if they win the final two games, they're in. They don't need anybody else's help. They control their own destiny. And they're going to be playing a backup quarterback for the third straight week here in week 17. So I don't think they have the look of a playoff team, but they might.
Yeah. So what Marcus is referencing, they're playing at the Colts this week. And then they play the Chargers at home. And what looked like would have been a loss if the Chargers beat the Raiders in Las Vegas on Monday night earlier in the year. It's been a couple months now. They have a chance. I don't think this is a real good football team right now. I think they're very middling, but they could make it. Pittsburgh, the same at 20. You could switch these two if you want. That's fine. The Steelers looked awful in the first half against Kansas City. They made some plays in the second half, but by that time they got out of their offense because the lead was insurmountable. What can you say about this football team right now after that game? I mean, is this a throw the game film in the trash? I saw your Mike Tomlin's not blowing kisses after this one, by the way. I saw that.
Yeah, I mean, of course he's not. I think it was just an awful game for Pittsburgh. This is probably Ben Roethlisberger's last game in Heinz Field against the Browns on Monday Night Football. They're not out of the playoff contention though. Like if they win their next two games and the Bengals, all they have to do is have the Bengals lose to the Chiefs and lose to the Browns, they're in. But I'm not sure that's all that realistic.
I don't think that's not who's going to win the AFC North.
You think it's going to be the Browns?
Now I do. After the Steelers lost this game. But I tell you what.
So they would need. So let's just go through that scenario really quickly.
Yeah.
For the Browns to win the AFC North, what they need to do is win their next two games, which would be at Pittsburgh on Monday night, home against the Bengals. They would need the Ravens to lose against the Rams, which I'm not going to spoil anything, but they're not favored to win that game. And then the Bengals to lose to the Chiefs, which very well could happen.
Yes.
Not all that unrealistic that the Browns could win this division still.
And I've been a Baker Mayfield defender. He did not play well against the Packers, but the rest of the team did.
Yeah, and they're getting guys back. Yep.
Yeah, I think people forget how good this Browns team was last year. This Browns team went and dominated Pittsburgh in the playoffs, and I don't know. I'm feeling it, but maybe I'm wrong about
That's going to be a huge game on Monday night, by the way, because the winner is going to be in a good spot to potentially host the home playoff game. The loser's out of the playoffs entirely. So that's going to be fun.
This is less a thing on Baker. Well, let's wait until we get to Cleveland. We'll get there in a second. Let's go to Minnesota, who I kept the same at 19. I was telling Marcus offline that I actually, if you held me, truth serum here, I would actually have the Vikings based on personnel and how good I actually think their team is when they play their best, much higher than this.
Yeah.
But I just can't do it. I can't do it. I didn't punish them. I left them in the same spot. Doesn't this feel like the 19th best team in the league?
Yeah, I agree. I think like they have all the ingredients to like a really good dish, but when you put them all together, for some reason, it's just not good.
Yes.
Because when you see the offense being balanced with Dalvin Cook, and they've got the two receivers, and they've got this pass rush that can get after the quarterback. This should be a team that wins 11 games every year, but there's something missing, and I don't know what it is.
It's like you tell your mom, I really would like toasted bread with almond butter and honey. And all that sounds really good, right? But then she puts too much honey on it. That's what happens. So, every time everything starts working, and then they give up the punt return touchdown, right? I think it was to Powell. It's just it's almost frustrating watching this team. They played an overtime game earlier this year at Baltimore. Baltimore ended up pulling that out. That's a big game in terms of how the rest of the season's standings have played out. Baltimore hoping to get Lamar Jackson back, but I just want to ask you, do you think it would be wise to just shut him down? I know they can still win the division. I know they can make the playoffs. Is it worth it? Do you think this is a team that can run the table? Because if you don't, then why not shut him down? His whole game is mobility.
That's a tough question. And I don't know if I have the right answer to it. My gut feeling is yes, because this team is decimated on defense right now. They can't stop anybody. They have an entirely new unit on defense. The offensive line's falling apart. Sometimes just admit that, hey, it's not our year. We're still the most talented team in the AFC North. And let's come back next year with a completely healthy team. I think you've got to wait one more week to do that, but I wouldn't be opposed to them doing it right now. And maybe they already have, Elliot. Maybe that's why we haven't seen Lamar over the last couple of weeks, is they are kind of artificially shutting him down, unless Tyler Huntley and Josh Johnson win the next couple of games and they make the playoffs. I wonder if that's already happened.
Right. And no one expected Huntley to be out. So, if you take Dak Prescott, for example, I know the injury is not as severe as Dak's, but you've seen how much Dak wants to run now, and I'm not saying they're the same quarterback. I just don't think, I know Lamar can throw the ball, but you don't want to take away his best gift or minimize it by rushing him so that you can capture the 7th spot in the playoffs and get beat. That's my point. New Orleans Saints at 17. Probably the most difficult team to rank.
I would say just throw out everything we saw on Monday night, because that's not indicative of this team at all.
Right. I could put them higher. Yep. Unfortunately, with Taysom Hill, not only was there COVID, but that finger problem that he's got is not going away. Nope. And he's not a great thrower of the football. I don't think he's as bad as everyone likes to make him out to be, but he's not good. They're trying to lean on Alvin Kamara. You can't do that unless you get adequate quarterback play. And the defense was on the field entirely too long, Marcus, against the Dolphins. I still think they're a top 5 unit.
I agree. I still think this is a borderline playoff team. I think if they win the next 2 games, they're going to be in, and they're going to be a tough out for whoever's that 2 seed, whether it's the Cowboys, whether it's the Bucks. I don't think you're going to want to see the Saints in the first round of the playoffs.
Speaking of, the Saints play, there it is again. Speaking of, I love it. It's my go-to. It's my whoopee. Please see Mr. Mom if you haven't. Carolina in New Orleans, and then they're at Atlanta. That's about I don't want to say as easy schedule as you can get, because the Falcons do have their number a little bit, but it's not bad. But let's go to Cleveland at 16. I just told Marcus that I think that Cleveland is probably going to win this division. When Cleveland is healthy, one thing about the Browns that, there's so much focus on Baker Mayfield and to a lesser extent Nick Chubb. People don't realize how good this offensive line can play when they're running optimally. I think they're one of the best lines in football, Marcus. They're at Pittsburgh, as you talked about earlier, and then they have Cincinnati at home. They didn't just beat Cincinnati. They kind of throttled them earlier in the year. I think running right at Cincinnati is one way to beat that team. Of course, we're not there yet. What do you think about the Browns' chances?
You know what's really funny is I agree with you. If they get to that Cincinnati game and it's for the division, I think I'll pick Cleveland to beat Cincinnati. I don't think I'm going to pick them to beat Pittsburgh, though, because they lost the last time they played Pittsburgh. They, for whatever reason, they just don't match up particularly well. Baker Mayfield
game.
It was an ugly game. Baker just is not the type of quarterback that plays well against Pittsburgh, but we'll see. Their season is here in week 17. It's a massive, massive game, but I think I could get behind you in picking the Browns if they win this week against the Steelers.
I think that game was like 15-10 or
15
something.
to 10. Yep.
Yeah, that game was ugly. I'll say this about the Browns. When they get running the ball, whether it's Dearness Johnson or Nick Chubb, and they play that kind of football, it reminds me a little bit of Tennessee when they get it going. And man, I love to see it. It's more what I grew up with, and I love watching Chubb play. I do. He's awesome. I still don't think he gets as much credit as Cook or Henry does, but maybe he doesn't deserve it. But I think Chubb is fantastic. Miami at 15, we talked about their defense earlier in the show. They became the first team in league history to win 7 games in a row and lose 7 games in a row in the same season. Is this a playoff team?
Probably not. I think they're going to come up like 1 win short, but give credit to Brian Flores. Like, this team is beating all the teams they should. The defense is playing outstanding, and the offense is not quite there yet, but you see flashes of it last night, like some of the creativity and stuff. They need like an overall or a rebuild on their offensive line. If they can do that this offseason, I don't see any reason why they can't be back in the playoffs next year.
They've got some pieces. I know you think Waddle's a star already. Mm-hmm. He set a record last night for most catches by a rookie wide receiver. They've got Gesicki at tight end. Their running game, it's
not great. It's not
great. But I like Tua. I like him. I think we need to see more. Same for the ditto the next team on our list at 14, Philadelphia, Jalen Hurts. I think we need to see more. I don't think you can make a decision on him yet. You may differ with me on that. What I've been waiting for from Philadelphia is to have multiple games in a row where the talent on both of their lines kind of show up at the same time. You know, they've had games where the defensive line has dominated. The game against Washington, their offensive line just mauled them. Mm-hmm. But we haven't really seen them put that all together where Hurts doesn't really have to do as much. So what do you think on the Eagles?
The Eagles are going to have an interesting decision to make this offseason because they're basically going to have to decide, I think, do we want to keep Jalen Hurts at like $1 million a year, or do we want to mortgage our 3 first-round picks to go get a quarterback? And if the question is like Russell Wilson, is Russell Wilson at $40 million a year and 3 first-round picks better than Jalen Hurts at $1 million a year? I don't know, but it's a fascinating question that I'm curious to see what Philadelphia does this offseason.
If I'm Philadelphia, I hang on to Hurts for another year. Maybe I go get a quality backup. There's only a few in the league, but I stick with Hurts. I spend my picks elsewhere, and I retool the team around him. I love that Sirianni, their head coach, is been running the football. Talk about a change of culture, man. I was talking to my buddy, a huge Eagles fan, when Miles Sanders got a carry on Thursday night against the Bucks. He got a standing ovation for like a 3-yard run. And now the Eagles are one of the deadliest running football teams in the league. It's hysterical.
It's crazy.
One of the things I like about Cincinnati, as much as we talk about their receivers, I feel like we haven't talked about Joe Mixon a whole lot. I like the fact that the Bengals can do that. I know Burrow threw for over 500 yards, but they don't have to win that way. They really don't. Do you believe in the Bengals now, or do you think this game was an aberration?
I don't think it was an aberration. No, I think Burrow's getting a lot of credit because he beat up on a bad secondary with a not very good pass rush. But this Bengals team is good. I just wonder, man, if they had a halfway decent offensive line, what Burrow would look like, because he is incredible, man. He's so good. I really like this Bengals team, and that's why I'm really rooting for them to beat the Chiefs this week, because I want to see them in the playoffs, because I think the NFL needs more young franchise quarterbacks, and I just want to see Burrow in a big game in the playoffs.
Yeah, they're not averaging a ton of yards per carry. Mixon has had well over 1,000 yards. They've actually gotten a nice little production at times from Samaje Perine. when they needed tough yards. They're just trying to grind the clock at the end. But I like the fact that they are capable of doing that. I think that will serve them well. Unfortunately, they'll be sitting at home because the Browns will be in the postseason. Chargers at 12. I hope I didn't just curse the Browns. Chargers at 12. What do you do with this team after losing to the Texans like that? If you listen to our Thursday podcast, we got some picks wrong. But one thing we told you was this line, I think was, I want to say it was 9.5 or 10.5. The Chargers were favored, and we said stay away from that. And I don't think either one of us saw this happening, though.
This was easily the most disappointing game, I think, of the season for me, because you know how much I like the Chargers and I'm rooting for the Chargers. To lay an egg like that is so frustrating because this team should be a lot better than what they are. And now they're in a fight to make the playoffs. They play the Broncos this week. They play the Raiders next week. They have to win both of those games to make the playoffs. And even then, it's not a guarantee. They need some other things to have happen. Their entire, wiggle room is gone. And Brandon Staley deserves a lot of blame because that defense was awful in that game. Absolutely awful.
I was just about to ask you. I think a lot of people have been very pro Brandon Staley. I have too. I didn't like his comments about analytics and kind of coming off superior. I thought that was bad form. And then to come lay an egg, this makes him even look worse. I'm sure there are a couple head coaches around the league that were chuckling at that. But I think he does deserve a little bit of blame for not having your team ready to play against Houston. Of course, pick sixes don't help. I don't care how bad your team is or how good your team is. Pick sixes never help, but be interesting to see what people think about the Chargers come the end of the year, because I don't think anybody knows right now. The 49ers are at 11. I'll tell you what I know. They had no business losing to Tennessee on Thursday night. They should have been up 20-0 with a commanding lead in that game. And
You're still mad about this one. You were so mad after this game.
I am, because I understand when players don't play well. Obviously, you don't mean to, and you look, sometimes things just happen. But there's certain situations in which you have to know the situation, and even if you don't make a perfect throw or whatever, you're fine. Case in point, you got a wheel route, you're about to go up 3 scores, your guy is wide open. Just lay the ball out there. Tom Brady doesn't care if it looks beautiful. Dude, 3/4 of Peyton Manning's throws and Dan Fouts' throws were wounded ducks, but they made sure that their receiver could make a play on them. I know you know which play I'm talking about.
Of course. Does it make it make you feel better that we've now learned that Jimmy Garoppolo has a thumb injury and maybe that's the reason why he struggled?
No. Schott put the ball out there. When a guy is that open.
I agree with you. It was an awful miss. It was an awful miss.
You also had, and that's not the only miss he had. He made other mistakes that I'm not harping on. He threw a red zone interception in the goal line. in the end zone on, I think, the previous drive. But here's the thing. The 49ers, if they get up on Tennessee like that by 20 points, Tennessee is a good football team. But, Marcus, right now they are not a team that's going to be coming back from 3 scores down on you. That's not what they're built to do. And we've seen Ryan Tannehill actually struggle this year when they've had to do that. Yes, this game was really disappointing. I guess we can wrap in number 10, Tennessee, while we're doing this. I will say this. It was very obvious who the better quarterback on the field was, and that Ryan Tannehill is still a really, really good player. They were playing with backup offensive tackle. Their defense did make really good plays. Can they do damage in the postseason without Derrick Henry?
Are we sure Derrick Henry's not going to be back?
We're not sure, but you know how we talk about with Aaron Rodgers, how they don't need an A+ game from him. I'm saying, let's just pretend Tennessee doesn't have their A+ player. Can they do damage with the backs they have? If their receivers, AJ Brown's got to be healthy. So let's just assume he's healthy. Would you be afraid of this team even without Henry?
Yeah, I would be, because Mike Vrabel's a really good coach. And that defensive line is really good. Like they can beat up offensive lines with Jeffrey Simmons and DeMarco Autry and Bud Dupree. Now that he's back, like they have 4 defensive linemen that are just really good at stopping the run and can push the pocket. And I think this addition of McKinney at linebacker, Zach Cunningham, at least gives them some guys that can cover in the middle of the field. I like this Titans team quite a bit. Like, if you are, let's say, the Bills and you're the 2 seed, the last team that you want to see is the Titans come to your place, because they're gonna beat you up there and they're gonna turn it into a smash mouth game I think they're really dangerous.
I finally got you on one. You're never going to catch me, but it's Danico Autry. It's my first time. I'm going to hold on. I just want to take this in. Okay, that felt good. I agree with you. I do. And as soon as you said defensive line, I pointed at you because I just, there are very few teams that can do what they can.
Yep.
Incidentally, the team they beat is a team that's been doing just that. That's why I was so excited for the Thursday night game. I was out to dinner, but I was sitting there watching the TV the whole time. Got Buffalo at number 9. By the way, just to kind of review, Browns 16, Dolphins 15, Eagles 14, Bengals 13, Chargers 12. Marcus kind of wanted me to flip the Chargers and Bengals. 49ers at 11, Tennessee at 10, Buffalo at 9. Now, offline, you told me you probably would put the Titans over the Bills. Josh Allen played an exceptional football game on Sunday, and their defense looked really well, although I thought Mac Jones just didn't play well. Why the Titans over Buffalo?
Because I still don't trust Josh Allen in a big game, and I know he won this one, but J.C. Jackson had the game in his hands in this one.
Yes, thank you for saying that.
Josh Allen threw a terrible ball that hit J.C. Jackson in the hands that if he catches it, he scores, and all of a sudden Buffalo's down, and that's an entirely different game. Buffalo's still good. Like, they're going to make the playoffs, I think, as long as they don't slip up here in the next 2 weeks. I just have my doubts that they have what it takes to win 3 straight games to make the playoffs. Or make the Super Bowl, I'm sorry.
Well, my good buddy and former colleague, Chad Ryder over at NFL.com, draft analyst, if you don't ever check out his stuff, please do. We're going to have him on our podcast so he and Marcus can D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, nerd out over the draft.
I can't wait.
I know. That's your favorite NFL event of the year, isn't it, the draft?
Of course. Yes, yeah. I love the draft. Yep.
So Chad has told me, he's like, hey, man, let it fly sometimes with football knowledge because, you know, you need people to hear your take. And instead, I like to bash on other people's takes. But when I talk to you about the disingenuous of Twitter, Josh Allen made some exceptional throws Sunday. And somebody tweeted out a couple of them. And I agree. I was like, wow, those are great. But J.C. Jackson had that ball right in his hands. It was an awful throw, and it was on the go-ahead drive in the fourth quarter. And so you're seeing all these national analysts talk about Josh Allen. I'm like, did you watch the game? Because as good a throws as he made, there were some clunkers, and one clunker that could have cost them the game in a game that they firmly had in control. And I just feel like it was a little disingenuous. People want to pump Josh Allen and a couple other quarterbacks, one whom I will not name because Marcus loves him, a lot more than they like to pump other quarterbacks.
Carson Wentz?
That's why I defend Derek Carr so much, because I don't feel like Derek Carr is one of those darlings. Okay, I'm done. Done with my rant. Arizona Cardinals at number 8. They lost again. They lost to a good football team, so I'm not going to bash on them. But I do think I came out okay on this argument that we had about Arizona.
What moron would ever put them at number 1? That just makes no sense at all. Cardinals have some big problems right now, and I'm not sure they're going to be able to solve them. They were down so bad at cornerback that they signed Rashad Breeland this week, who got cut from the Vikings a week ago because he got into a physical altercation with the coach. Breeland came in, was going to start this week on Sunday against the Cowboys, tested positive for COVID. So, like, that's just how bad the situation is for the Cardinals right now at corner. And it's probably going to be their downfall.
Yeah. There's a bunch of things. I've talked about Arizona ad nauseum this season, so I kind of like you just talking about them. I feel like they're the 8th best team in the league. I think this is the perfect ranking for them. They're going to be a tough out in the playoffs, but I think they're going to be an out in the playoffs. That's really where I stand with it. So it's not being disrespectful. I think they're a good football team. New England is as well, but we have to remember that they're number 7, by the way, New England Patriots. Not a good day for their defense. Their defensive backs could not cover. It was awful. They kept. I felt like now it's really hard to judge what a team is doing schematically with defensive backs when you're watching a game on broadcast TV because you're not seeing the all 22 unless the network shows it for the benefit of their color analysts. But I will say this: it sure looked like the Patriots were running the same coverage a lot, and they could not hide Miles Bryant, number 41, literally over and over and over again. He kept getting beat. They couldn't catch the ball. J.C. Jackson had the game, and then they didn't tackle. Yep. And this was probably the worst game I've seen from the Patriots defense, including the Cowboys game where they gave up all those yards.
And then on top of that, we look at our list of 8 teams here. They're the only one without an established, proven potential MVP candidate at quarterback, right? I think almost everybody, almost every quarterback on this list that we're going to talk about here, they've all been in the MVP conversation at one point in their career. Mac Jones might eventually be there, but it's just awfully hard for a rookie quarterback in big games like this to consistently play well. It's not surprising that they slipped up here.
Yeah, Miles Bryant kept getting kind of locked up with Isaiah McKenzie, and then even in their zone coverage, the Bills.
It's a bad matchup for Bryant because he's not fast. He's a small, slow slot corner that relies on being really tough, and McKenzie's really fast. It's just a bad matchup for him.
The problem was these tough guys weren't making tackles either. And one thing you've got to do in the secondary is you got to be able to tackle, which is going to get me to a guy at number 5 in a second. But we're going to go to number 6 with the Los Angeles Rams. Again, I think this is an appropriate place for them.
Yep.
They're a little different than Arizona to me because now I do think they'd be a tough out like the Cardinals, but I think the Rams have a better chance of winning the Super Bowl than the Cardinals do. That's why I have them a little bit higher. I know they split this year. Your thoughts on the Rams? Do you think that they are a team that should be really, really scary, or you think they're just going to be a tough out in the postseason?
Nope, they're going to be really scary because they've got like 3 superstars on each side of the ball. And if those guys play well, it's hard for anybody to beat them. So I have no problem at all with the Rams here at 6.
You know, I'm looking at Courtney on our Zoom over at Brinks, and I don't know if she's in the doghouse, like she did something wrong because she's in a different spot and she looks glum. She's got the windows behind her. Somebody kicked her out of her normal spot. So
I know. She's probably thinking, why are you guys taking so long on Jacksonville and the Lions that were having to speed through 5-1?
I would agree. Courtney, we hope you had a good Christmas. I know she's being quiet. She doesn't like to jump on. So we just talk about her and she doesn't say anything. But she's got a good Christmas sweater on, I could tell. Okay, let's go number 5, Dallas Cowboys. I've been watching the Cowboys since probably 1982. I've never seen a game like that. I've seen some blowout games. I remember they beat Jacksonville a couple of years ago and kind of everything went their way. The Cowboys dominated this game, but literally everything went their way as well. It's just one of those crazy games where special teams was firing, defense was firing, offense was firing. All the coaching decisions panned out. About the only thing that didn't pan out the whole game was early in the game when they ran the trick lateral play and Amari Cooper dropped it.
Yeah.
Marcus, he drives me nuts sometimes. I mean, Amari Cooper drops the easiest balls and makes these great plays. Drives me nuts, but he's still a great player. You ready for a hot Cowboys opinion fresh out of the oven?
Sure.
Rayvon Diggs is not a player of the year candidate, a defensive player of the year candidate. I'm sorry. I know he's got 11 interceptions and it's remarkable and he's really good. And I like the guy a lot, but I think we need to slow it down a little bit. He has been beaten a lot this year. Nothing horrible. He's made huge plays. He's definitely, to me, an all-pro level player this year, but he's also not much of a tackler. And I just have to defend the old Cowboys. I apologize, but he keeps getting – they only mention Everson Walls when they mention him breaking Everson. Everson Walls tackled, and Everson Walls picked off nearly 60 passes in his career, and Trayvon Diggs has gotten more credit in the last 5 weeks than I've heard Everson Walls get in 30 years. I'm sorry. I just had to make that one thing. I'm done.
That's fine. Let's move on to the Colts at number 4.
Wasn't Everson Walls your dad's favorite player?
It was. Yeah.
It's because your dad had really great taste. That's why. So, hey, I like Trayvon Diggs a lot. One more point on the Cowboys. Marcus and I have talked about this. It's worth reiterating in case you didn't hear it. As much as we like Parsons, as much as we like Randy Gregory, Tank Lawrence being healthy on that defense is the key.
Yep.
It's the key. What a play. The interception. What a play. Ridiculous. Mm-hmm. I don't know what was better, the interception or the run afterwards. Let's go to the Colts at number 4. Are you buying me on the Colts now?
I'm not sure the Colts are going to make the playoffs, Elliot. Yeah. So let's talk about where they're at.
I like the pause. The belated pause just to rub it in.
But let's be real.
Courtney, this is one of the times I really wish you jump on the mic. Just talk about anything. I don't care.
If the Colts are healthy, yes, they are absolutely a Super Bowl contender. But they're not healthy. And they're in real trouble now that Carson Wentz tested positive.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of their injuries.
Well, okay, so let's start with the biggest one. Carson Wentz tested positive for COVID today.
Yep.
He's unvaccinated, which means he misses 10 days at minimum. Okay.
Right.
So that means he's out this week against the Raiders. They were already going to be missing all 5 starters on their offensive line this week. They have Darius Leonard, another one that tested positive for COVID. He's unvaccinated. He is out this week against the Raiders. If they don't beat the Raiders here on Sunday, they no longer control their own destiny. They play Jacksonville in Week 18. Frank Reich has never beaten the Jaguars in Jacksonville in his career before. Even if they win that game, they need to make sure that other teams lose, like the Chargers and some of these other ones that they don't have tiebreakers against. This is a team that's in a little bit of trouble now that Wentz is out.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. I know there are going to be people who say, "Hey, this isn't fair given the rules," but this is what the players agreed to.
It's a really good team, and it's if they miss the playoffs, it's going to be really unfortunate. Can I give you an odds thing really quickly though?
Yeah.
So their odds to win this game. I'm spoiling our show for tomorrow. By the way, we're going to do a show Wednesday rather than Thursday. But their odds to beat the Raiders, they were 7.5-point favorites. That's dropped all the way down to 1 after the Carson Wentz news. However, their Super Bowl odds went from this morning at 18-1 to 16-1, which made me think odds makers in Vegas actually believe this is a good thing long-term for the Colts, because if they can survive and make it to the playoffs, they're not going to have to worry about their guys surprisingly testing positive for COVID, missing a playoff game. They might actually be one of the teams that's most suited to make a run in the playoffs, and it's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, well, I mean, because part of that has got to be that their players, I'm sure Carson Wentz and Leonard are very much, disappointed would be I'm definitely underselling it, but they will be as careful as can possibly be, because
they won't even be tested. Under the new rules, if you test positive for COVID and you come off the list, you don't get tested for 75 days.
That's right. I forgot they changed that.
So now those guys are all cleared to go through the playoffs, where
that's right.
You could be matched up, let's say, against the Chiefs in round 2. Patrick Mahomes, knock on wood that he doesn't test positive, but he hasn't yet, which means there's a chance that he could, which I guess that means I understand why those odds would change. Sure.
And the other big change the NFL made to the policy was that if you are vaccinated and then you have a negative test before the game, you can play.
Yep.
In this case, these guys, it's a mandatory 10 days. They're obviously they're not going to make it in time for this game. So there it is. Sorry for the super complex talk, but thank you for picking me up on that, because that was one of the changes. What was that, 3 weeks ago? Yep. The NFL kind of altered their COVID rules. I think everybody's just trying to adjust on the fly. Either way, I hope the Colts make the playoffs. It would be a shame if they didn't, because they're too good a football team. And plus, I want a Colts-Cowboys Super Bowl. I want a Super Bowl 5 rematch. Tampa Bay Bucks are at number 3. We predicted they would handle Carolina. Big reason they did was Antonio Brown coming back. I know a lot of people, again, another thing fans are probably going to harp on is Bruce Arians having Antonio Brown back on that football team. What do you think of that? Do you think it's an okay thing because it got the Bucks a win, or do you think this might hurt the Bucks in the long run doing something like this?
I think it hurts them a little bit, because now you are so reliant on Antonio Brown. And I think that's a bad spot to be in, to be honest, Elliot. This team is way better when they have Brown as the third option. And it's, hey, if he's available and he's following the rules, that's great. We'll play him. But now that you have to rely on him, that's not a situation that you want to be in.
Yeah, I agree. I hated the Leonard Fournette injury for this team.
Yeah.
Guy was having kind of like Robert Quinn. I know Leonard Fournette's more well-known than Robert Quinn and people in fantasy, but I don't think fans realize how productive he's been since Tampa Bay picked him up. I know you do. Mm-hmm. The guy was averaging, about 100 scrimmage yards and a touchdown a game. Yep. Going back to last year. Was that including the postseason?
Including the postseason, yeah. So, I mean, it actually was a little more than that. It was almost like 110 yards and 5 receptions a game. He has been so good for them.
That's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Well, you would have loved it if you had him in Dynasty. I'll tell you that. All right, Kansas City Chiefs at number 2. Maybe this would be a great spot for me to say, speaking of, but the Chiefs kind of have a dynasty going because they look like they're headed towards the Super Bowl again. And it's a good thing to remind ourselves that they had a great record in 2017. They didn't make the championship game. 18, they go to Mahomes. They made the championship game. And if it wasn't for D Ford lining up in the neutral zone, costing them I think it was interception of Brady somewhere near the red zone, they win that game most likely. And we're talking about the potential of this team going to 4 Super Bowls in a row. I don't know, other than the Colts, who's going to be able to stop them right now.
And I actually disagree with your ranking here. I think they should be 1. You compare them to the Packers. Let's say quarterback is a wash. And you might even say that Rodgers is playing better right now. That's fine. I like the offensive line better for Kansas City. I like the defense better, and I like the coaching better. On top of that, they're just playing better. Like, Green Bay has let a lot of these teams hang around, and it took 4 interceptions for them to beat the Browns at home, right? The Chiefs are just putting teams away early. Like the Steelers-Chief game. That game was over first quarter, first half. They win by 26. They beat the Raiders by 39. They only give up 9 points to the Broncos. They only give up 14 points against the Raiders before, 9 to the Cowboys. Like, they're just dominating teams in a way that the Packers aren't right now. I just think the Chiefs are a better overall team.
I'll go to the Packers here at number 1, and so that we could talk about that. Not to mention, we're pushing an hour here.
I know. We got to hurry.
Get excited. Courtney looks excited. I would say that Green Bay personnel wise. So if you look at Kansas City's defense, they're playing hot right now. They're kind of like Miami. They're playing hot, but they might be playing a little bit over their heads. I think Green Bay is actually playing a little bit under.
I agree.
And so I look at the potential of their defensive unit, and I look at the Packers running backs, which I think is a clear advantage over Kansas City. Green Bay can play in any conditions and win. I think Green Bay could go to Kansas City right now and win, especially if Aaron Rodgers plays like Aaron Rodgers. So I am going a little bit on potential. They could have lost that game to the Browns if Baker Mayfield didn't make some plays potentially, but give the Packers credit for catching the ball, which we see defensive backs not do, and for making some plays themselves. At the end of the day, I think this is really, really close. But as a fan, and I love NFL history, I got to be honest, Marcus, I kind of like seeing Kansas City and Green Bay's graphics there at 1 and 2.
It would be a really fun Super Bowl, wouldn't it?
Yes.
As much as I don't love Aaron Rodgers, I think that would be a really fun Super Bowl. And I kind of hope we get it if it's not one of our teams.
You've got 2 superior quarterbacks. You have a young upcoming head coach against a savvy head coach that I saw also a tweet today that he should be considered for coach of the year. And I agree. You have 2 franchises. I love that they don't really change their look. Like, they're classic. I love that. And by the way, if you don't know, this was Super Bowl 1. This is the very first. This is what kicked off the Super Bowl era. And so I think it would be a good thing. That'd be great if they even wore the same uni matchup. So that would be cool. Either way, I agree with Marcus. I think these are almost interchangeable. I wouldn't put up a huge fight with Kansas City being number 1. Do you think this is what I missed the most on the rankings?
I do. I just think the Chiefs are playing really good right now. They just put up 36 in a game. Really, they put up 36 in 3 quarters. And without Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill had 2 catches, like, this was all Byron Pringle and Josh Gordon and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Like, this team is really good and they're deep and they've got a defense that they can actually rely on to win games. I think the Chiefs are, to me, pretty clearly the best team in football right now.
Edwards-Helaire, though, got hurt early.
And not sure it mattered because Darrell Williams is good. And Derek Gore is even like a pretty functional third running back. Like, I just don't know if it matters that much.
It certainly didn't in that game, especially when they pulled ahead. But I like that. I think Romo made the point on the Tony Romo made the point on the broadcast that, hey, if the Chiefs can run the football like this, then look out. Marcus always talks about running backs don't matter, but we have to reiterate that doesn't mean that running games don't matter.
Correct.
And if you got to go to Lambeau, for example, the Chiefs won't have to go to Lambeau, but any team, it would help if you could run the football. That's for sure. So this is the rankings. We'll go over it real quick. We'll start at 32. If could be so kind as we're going to do the rundown because it's fun, because I like watching all the little things slide, I'll be honest. I got the Jags at 32, the Giants at 31, Carolina at 30, despite their record. Houston at 29, to be honest, I would have liked to move them up a little bit. I watched entirely too much of the Jets at 28. but I have to stay on brand. Lions at 27. I like the way that team's competing. Seahawks at 26. What a disappointment. Falcons are still playoff viable. We say it every week. They're at 25. If we flip it up, Washington football team at 24. Try not to punish them too much on this game. Chicago, big win for them in that organization at 23. Broncos at 22. Raiders also have a very good chance. They control their own destiny, as Marcus points out. They're at 21. Pittsburgh at 20 still has a chance to make the postseason. The Vikings at 19, another disappointment. Really a riddle, that team. The Ravens at 18, still viable. We wonder if they should consider shutting Lamar Jackson down. Saints at 17, don't judge them on the Monday night game. Flip it over to 16 and below. We got the Cleveland Browns. I think they'll win the division. Now I've reversed my reverse jinx, so we should be good. Miami at 15, they're hot. Eagles at 14, they have a chance to get that 7th seed. Bengals at 13, Marcus is rooting for them to win the North. Chargers at 12, nobody knows what to think. 49ers at 11, don't think they're going to blow that playoff spot, but they kind of did. Tennessee at 10, Buffalo at 9. And then our top 8, this is where we kind of get into the contenders. I've told you, I think the Cardinals are just a tough out, not necessarily a Super Bowl team. Patriots at 7. Marcus points out, you look at quarterbacks, this is the outlier. Rams at 6. Now we get into the real Super Bowl contenders. Rams at 6, Cowboys at 5, Colts at 4. If they get in the playoffs, which is so weird to say, Bucks at 3, Kansas City Chiefs at 2, and Green Bay Packers at 1. I wanted to just point out there one more thing on the Colts, really 2 more things on the Colts. They played at Kansas City in 2018 with Andrew Luck in the postseason, and the game got away from them. This is a different Colts team. A lot of their players were rookies. That was that great rookie class they had. There's that. And then number 2 with the Colts, I still think Jonathan Taylor deserves MVP consideration. I don't know who the front runner is right now. It might be a conversation for another day, but I think that's a really interesting race this year. But with that, I will give you, did I get to Bucks 3, Chiefs 2, Packers 1?
Yeah.
And you have the last word.
I don't mind Jonathan Taylor being in the conversation for MVP. You know how much I hate running backs, but he's had a fantastic season. But that's not who I'd give the award to. I'd give it to Cooper Kupp. We haven't really ever seen a season like this from a receiver in a long time. I think he means so much to that Rams team. And if they win 12 games, why not? I think that's a more rare season than what Jonathan Taylor's doing or what Aaron Rodgers is doing or what Patrick Mahomes is doing. So why not? We've also never had a wide receiver win MVP before. So it'd be kind of cool to see.
I'm with you on that. And I would just say that I just wish we would kind of monitor things on a per game basis instead of doing season numbers, because we've got an extra game. And now I think his season is better than Calvin Johnson's was, because Cooper Kupp is also doing it in the red zone. Calvin Johnson only had 5 touchdown catches in 2012. Cooper Kupp has been a machine. He's been
he's on a better team. And he's on a better team, and they're not having to throw him the ball every time because they're down, right? Like, I don't think the Rams are artificially bumping up his numbers. Like, they're using him because they have to, right?
Yes.
And I think it's just been a really strong year for Kupp, and I would fully support him being the MVP.
And the people that say, well, he's not spectacular, he just makes plays. That's what you're supposed to do in football. That's what you do. Jerry Rice was not always spectacular. He makes it look easy. That's a kind of athletic brilliance in and of itself. I'm not against you on that. It's probably between him, Rodgers, and Taylor, but we should talk about that on Friday. Either way, we're going to get out of here. We're going to do our picks podcast tomorrow. So make sure you listen to that. It'll be around this time, around 12 o'clock Pacific. And you can also hit Marcus up at Marcus_Mosher or myself at Harrison NFL. So for Marcus and for Courtney and Eric and Herbert at Brinks, I'm Elliot Harrison. We are so glad that you stayed with us for over an hour. See y'all later.